Hi, everybody. Wow, start right off with a big old frog in the throat. Welcome. Glad you're here. I'm Michelle Duval with the Mindful Center. We'll get started in just about 2 minutes. So I always log in just about 2 minutes early. You get a chance to kind of settle in. I get a chance to settle in, and then we'll get going. I have a lovely workshop to share with you, a really helpful practice that has been used for a really long time in the meditative traditions and lineages and practices. I hope so much it brings you benefit. I can't wait to share it with you. So I'll share that practice, and then I'm going to share with you another practice, a real simple practice, but one that I find it's sometimes it's those really simple ones that are so much easier to integrate into your daily life, right? So the focus of today's workshop is to be your own soulmate. We'll get started in just about 1 more minute. We will do a couple of meditations, so get whatever you need prepared for that. I'm going to drink my green juice. Better not do a product placement, right? Note to self, don't drink green juice when you're prepping for a workshop. I just spilled green juice. Luckily, it didn't go down my shirt. It's a good day, all right? We gotta celebrate the small stuff. So just getting ready. Got about 30 more seconds. We'll go. We're just kind of settling in. We'll do a couple meditations as part of this session. So whatever you need to keep yourself comfortable for that, you can get ready. Just a couple seconds more. I try to start right on time so that nobody's left out. There we go. It looks like it is go time on the noggin. Okay. So welcome everybody. Welcome to today's session. I'm Michelle Duval of the Mindful Center. Today's workshop is called Be Your Own Soulmate. Be your own soulmate. So in life, we spend a heck of a lot of time focusing on our relationship with others, right? All the myriad of different relationships we have with other people. I watch my kids now who are 11, and their relationships with their friends are getting more and more important to them, right? And they're learning things like how to be a good friend. You don't lie to your friends. You show them care when they're sad or hurting. Sometimes even laugh at their jokes when you don't think they're too funny, right? Just to be a good friend. And these are all really important aspects of developing into what we might consider to be a good person. Our relationship with others are also super important to our health and well-being and happiness. But an area of life that I don't think we spend enough time really contemplating and developing is within the realm of our relationship with our own self. So most of us have never been taught how to be a really good friend to our own self, how to not lie to ourselves as an act of care, right? How to speak to ourselves in our own minds in a kind and respectful voice, or how to have our own backs, right, in times of trouble. Most of us are never really taught these skills, and yet, if you think about it, our own self is the one being that we spend the most time with, right? No one even comes close. We are the ones here with ourselves, even when we're sick and grumpy and no one else wants to be around us. We are the ones with ourselves in the dark of night, in the times of trouble and times of celebration, after everyone else has gone home or gone to bed. It's really us with us, right? So it seems like it might be reasonable to take a look at how we're actually fostering this relationship with ourselves, how we're talking to ourselves on the level of mind, how we're treating ourselves. And if we can apply some of the same principles that we utilize to help us become better friends and partners with others, we just might actually be able to become a good friend with our own self. become a good partner, treat ourselves with respect and care and presence, just like we would a good friend. And so that's what we're going to do here in today's workshop. We're going to take a look at some meditative practices that can help us to better become our own best friend, our own soulmate, someone we can rely on and feel good in our own company. And as it turns out, this is really one of the main purposes of meditative practice, actually. The main purpose of meditation is to reduce our own and others' suffering. So one of the main purposes of meditation is to help us reduce our own and others' suffering in order to help ourselves be more happy and at peace. That's really the purpose of meditative practice. And if we think about it, one of the main areas in our lives that we tend to create a lot of suffering and stress for ourselves is really within our own mind, right? So how many of us live life is in a state of fight or antagonism within our own minds. We fight our own selves daily within the scope of our own mind. We speak harshly to ourselves. We judge and criticize ourselves in a way that we would never do to others. Within the scope of our own mind, many of us hold ourselves up to virtually impossible standards. And not only that, but if we were to take a look, we'd probably see that some of those standards are not only impossible to live up to, that we're holding ourselves up to, but they're ever changing, right? So if we do ever attain one of our standards, like we do a good job, we tend to just then change the standard so that we're again holding ourselves up to the impossible, right? And this is one of the fundamental areas in our lives where we experience suffering within our own minds, which is really where our relationship with self exists, right? Where are you experiencing your relationship with your own self? It's really in the scope of your own mind, within our own mind, and how we speak to ourselves, and how we self-judge, self-criticize, etc. And so if meditation is about learning how to reduce our own suffering and helping to reduce that of others when we can, then we definitely have to go into our relationship with self that's appearing within our own mind. And that turns out to be one of the fundamental reasons why we meditate. It's sometimes called turning the mind into an ally, turning the mind into an ally, your greatest ally, your greatest friend, your soulmate. That's why we meditate in the first place. So if we're quiet, if we don't talk for even just a few minutes, and we can just watch and listen to our own minds, we can learn something pretty easily, pretty quickly about what our relationship with our own self is really like. So let's do that now. We're just going to get quiet. Go ahead and close your eyes. And I just want you to observe and listen to your own mind. Sometimes at first when we do this, suddenly the mind is quiet. But if we just wait, bring a little bit of patience to this, the mind will start to do what it does, which is kind of yammer at us, right? Talk to us. So we're just kind of observing and listening to our own mind. How is it speaking to you right now? Just keep observing, even if it gets uncomfortable. What's your mind telling you? What's it talking about? common theme that appears in the mind is that we're somehow not enough or not good enough. And that can appear in the endless busyness sometimes, the endless plans of the mind. Those plans are like us always needing more, 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 because somehow we're not enough or not good enough. Can you notice any of that? The endless plans, the need for more, more, more. How does it feel to be in your own mind right now? How does it feel to just be you with you? And just noticing. Maybe just one more minute. Just keep watching the mind. Keep watching, noticing the voices in the mind, the almost schizophrenia at times of thinking one thing, then another, the endless plans. Okay, you can go ahead and open your eyes. So for most of us, when we do an exercise like that, where all we're doing, we're not trying to focus on the breath or focus on the body, we're just kind of watching the show that's happening in the mind. A lot of us can start to realize that there's almost like a type of schizophrenia happening within our own minds. There's a certain degree of mental fragmentation, right? So 1 minute our minds telling us how many things we need to do today. We shouldn't be here just watching our own mind. We shouldn't even be in this workshop. We're busy. We got to get stuff done. The next minute, it's like reliving a joke someone said the other day. The next moment, it's berating us for something stupid we said or did last week or whatever it is. So it's jumping like all over the place a lot of the times in these really fragmented styles of thinking. Now, can you imagine having a friend like that? Having a friend who, when we sit down to spend some time with them, they acted like we just did within our own minds, right? Where they're just kind of jumping all over the place or distracted or not really present. 1 second they're berating you, next second they're remembering a funny joke you said, the next second they're saying you got to do more, more, more. Can you imagine having someone in your life like that, like the being that you have inside your own head most of the time, most of the day? If you had a friend, what if you had a friend who judged you the way that you judge yourself? Think about that for a moment. What if you had a friend who judged you the way that you judged yourself? What if you had a friend who spoke to you the way that you speak to yourself sometimes? What if you had a friend who was so constantly and chronically busy that they could never really give you their attention? Think about having a friend who is just always thinking about something else besides just being here and present with you. How would that make you feel? How would you feel about that friend? Right? So most of the mindfulness meditations that I offer and that you might find on the various apps and websites, most of the mindfulness meditations are first and foremost helping us just to be a little bit more present with ourselves. And that's really the foundation of mindfulness practice. Choosing to practice being just a little bit more present with our own selves. And one of the very first challenges that people encounter when trying to do this is just how much their minds aren't present, right? And then people give up on the practice, they quit, they don't want to do it. But if you want to become a better friend to yourself, which I hope so much that you do, you will need to first and foremost learn how to be a little bit more present with yourself, because that's where any type of real friendship begins, right? An ability just to be present with another person, if you externalize it, and creating a more healthy, friendly relationship with our own selves also need to begin on that foundation of just being a little bit more present with ourselves. It's where friendship begins, and it's where it grows and flourishes. Just being around someone like yourself who can give you their attention when it's needed, right? So the famous Vietnamese monk and teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, he used to say that the three things we need to make our own mind our ally, or to become our own friend, or to become our own soulmate, the three things we need are love, understanding, and healing. Love, understanding, and healing. So most of us have these ways of being in our own mind, of being in relationship to ourselves that actually really hurt us. We have these ways of talking to ourselves and judging ourselves and criticizing ourselves that hurt us, that cuts us. And then each and every time we repeat some of those mental behaviors that hurt us in the first place, it's like picking the scab off the cut over and over again. One of the schizophrenic type of actions that we all engage in within our own mind is that sense of repetition, right? We don't just berate ourselves once for something stupid we did. We tend to berate ourselves over and over and over and over again. And each time we repeat that behavior, it's like picking the scab off the wound. So what happens? It can never heal. So we all need to heal those cuts that we've given ourselves in our own mind. And the only way to really heal those cuts is through love and understanding. Those are the two other elements that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about. Love and understanding is what enables us to kind of like take a few steps back and stop picking the scabs off the wounds all the time. And one of the most effective ways to do this in meditation is by engaging in a practice called equalizing self and others. Equalizing self and others. That's what we're going to get into now. Equalizing self and others. One of my greatest teachers, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, he would say, quote, "Just as I wish to be free from suffering and experience only happiness, so do all other beings. In this respect, I am no different from any other being. We are all equal." End quote. So let's think about that for a moment. I'm going to read it again. And I really want you to contemplate this, because this is the beginning place of where we can start to cultivate this sense of love and understanding, which will allow us to heal on that level of mind, become our own best friend. So the quote goes, "Just as I wish to be free from suffering and experience only happiness, just as I wish to be free from suffering and experience only happiness, so do all other beings. In this respect, I am no different from any other being. We are all equal." It's kind of hard to disagree with this statement, isn't it? It's like we all want to be happy, and we all want freedom from stress and suffering. Every single one of us. It's actually the two things that unite all of us together, that we all want happiness and we all want freedom from stress and suffering. So in this regard, we are no different from any other living being. And yet, how many of us are treating ourselves is very different from how we're treating others, from how we're treating our friends. If we're all equal in this desire to be happy and to be free from stress and suffering, why are we not treating ourselves equally? A lot of us treat others, friends, your kids, your families, way better than you're treating yourself. So how you speak to yourself sometimes in your own mind, you would probably never, ever in a million years say those words out loud to your friend, right? Or God forbid, to your child. I've literally, in my mind, I have literally called myself an idiot loser before. I know that term because it's something I've called myself, you idiot loser. In my own mind, I've called myself an idiot loser. And yet I would never even think those words about my dear friends. I would never in a million trillion years think those words, much less say them to my kids. Never. So if we're all equal, why in the world do we allow ourselves to speak something like that to ourselves, to speak in those terms of self-criticism and judgment and harshness? If we're all equal, why in the world do I allow myself to speak something like that to myself? If we go back to my teacher's quote, just as I wish to be free from suffering and experience only happiness, so do all other beings. In this respect, I am no different from any other being. We are all equal. So why are we not treating ourselves as equal? So typically, equalizing self with others is a practice to help us reduce our own self-absorption. Okay, so I want you to listen to this, because this is where we're going to get into the practice, and then I'll take you through a meditation. So typically, equalizing self with others is a practice that can help us reduce our own self-absorption. Because actually, this is what it is. This is where the problem is. We are obsessed in our minds with ourselves. We are totally and utterly absorbed in our minds by ourselves. When we did that exercise just a little bit ago of watching our minds, I will bet my bottom dollar that just about every single thought you had something to do about yourself. How something made you feel, what we had to get done that day, how we're feeling. In our minds, if we can be honest, we are totally and utterly absorbed with ourselves. Now listen to this. That's why when we make even the slightest mistake, a mistake so slight that no one else in the whole world would even notice it, we notice it big time because we're so focused on ourselves. Right? We can do the smallest thing. Say you're in conversation and you make some stupid comment. The conversation goes on, and in your own mind, you're going, "Why did I say that? That was so dumb." Right? We tend to magnify these little moments because we're so focused on ourselves. We're like obsessed with our own selves and actions and behaviors and how we look and this little freckle and this little bulge, whatever it is. It's like we're seeing our lives and ourselves through this super intense magnifying glass, right? And what do magnifying glasses do? They magnify things. They make things appear bigger than they are. So the practice of equalizing self and others is really a practice within which we back ourselves out from under the magnifying glass. And we allow ourselves to go join all the other people in the world who aren't holding us under the glass and who we aren't holding under the glass, right? So we hold ourselves under this magnifying glass and we inspect each and every one of our moves, each and every moment of each and every day. When we practice equalizing ourselves with others, we kind of pull back on that magnifying glass. We bring others more into our field of vision, into our field of experience. And then what happens is we start to see ourselves and others a little bit more equally so that we're not magnifying our own faults and flaws all day long, all the time. We practice equalizing ourselves with others so that we can begin to see ourselves a little more equally. And we can practice talking to ourselves a little bit more like we talk to others, with love and kindness and respect, right? We can practice treating ourselves a little more equally to how we treat others. So this is the practice I'm going to take you through now, a practice of equalizing self and others, so that we can begin to learn how to step ourselves out from under the magnifying glass, from under the microscope, so that we can stop magnifying and focusing in on all our faults and flaws and just allow ourselves to be and teach ourselves how to then be with ourselves just being. Did you get that? So we pull ourselves out from under the magnifying glass. We equalize self and others so that we can allow ourselves to just be, not always being scrutinized and inspected and criticized and judged. So we can allow ourselves to just be, leave us be in our minds. And then we can teach ourselves how to then be with ourselves just being. If you're unsure what the heck I'm talking about, that's perfect. That means it's time to practice. So let's get ready to meditate, right? Let's get ready to meditate. So first, let's just get ourselves a little bit more comfortable in the body. You can close your eyes while you do this. And just kind of moving and stretching if that's what we want. That feels good in the body, or you can just begin to sit quietly, whatever best suits you. And then whenever you're ready, you can just begin to sit quietly. Finding a posture of sitting within which you can be relaxed and comfortable, but still alert, able to pay attention. And again, just as we did earlier, I want you to begin noticing your inner dialogue. So just watching, observing, listening to your own mind talking to yourself. The mind talking about your plans or what you have to get done. Your mind telling you how you feel or how you should feel. And just kind of noticing how everything in the mind, everything that's going on in the mind is really all about you. Even if you think about others, it's still in relationship to you, what you have to do later for your kids, or how someone made you feel. Just seeing if you can notice how each and every thought is really about you. It's just like you're under a magnifying glass. So I want you to try something now. I want you to, in your mind's eye, kind of just like see a visual of yourself just sitting here in meditation. So just seeing yourself in your mind's eye here meditating. And how I want you to imagine that this huge magnifying glass comes into view. And now you're seeing yourself through this absurdly large magnifying glass. And oh my goodness, like every pore is gigantic, every freckle, every hair. Your ears look huge and distorted, and your limbs, your whole body is just distorted and huge. This is how we tend to see our lives, our actions, what we look like. This gigantic nose, this disproportionate chin. Every fault and flaw is like magnified 100 times over. This is how we see ourselves. And now I want you to imagine that a friend of yours comes over and sits beside you in meditation. So see that in your mind's eye and see if you can feel that now, if you can. So that a good friend comes over and sits next to you and starts meditating with you. And now I want you to imagine that in order to get your friend in view, this magnifying glass has to like pull back a little bit. So now it's you and your friend under the magnifying glass, but in order to get both of you in view, the lens needs to pull back. So now your mind isn't just focused on you, it's focused on you and your friend. Both of you here in meditation. And now I want you to imagine that another person comes over, someone you don't know. And they come over and they just sit and join you and your friend in meditation. So now there's the three of you sitting together. And again, your lens needs to pull back a little bit so as to be able to catch all three of you in its glass, in its vision. And so now you're seeing yourself, your friend, and this other person here together. And just noticing how each time you've done this, pulling back on the magnifying glass, it's like you start seeing the three of you a little bit more equally. You see yourself and your friend and the third other. And now, slowly, one by one, more people start to come and join you in meditation, sitting all around you and your friend. And you're kind of seeing all of this from like a bird's eye view through this magnifying glass, but that now has to keep pulling back more and more to catch everyone in its view. And so you're not just focusing on yourself, you're still a part of the mix, but you're just one of many. Other people just like you who want to be happy and who want to feel less stress and suffering, just like you. Just more and more people continue to join you in meditation. And your focus has to keep widening to be able to bring this ever-growing view, ever-growing group into focus. So now you are one of many. Your hopes and dreams and fears and confusions, the same as everyone else's. And we're just breathing now with the group. Feeling a part of the group. No one person any more important than another. And pretty soon, so many people have joined us in meditation that your view is actually quite wide from quite far away. So now you know you're in the mix, but you're really just a speck, just one head amongst so many. All with the wish to be happy, all with a wish to feel free from stress and suffering. And just kind of noticing how this is making you feel. Holding this vision of equal self and others, of shared space, perhaps even of shared peace, for just one more minute. Sharing this moment, this space with all these others, all these equals. And then we can close the meditation with this wish, this intention to perhaps begin to live our lives in this sense, this space of equal, this sense of equalizing self and others. We can begin to move and stretch and attend to the body. And then just opening your eyes when you're ready. So sometimes people have a fear of doing a practice like that because they have this fear of losing themselves amidst the crowd. But if we take a look at where so many of our problems within our own mind comes from, so many of them come from this kind of hyper focus on ourselves, on our faults, on our fears, on our confusions, on our mistakes. And so many times we have this fear of losing ourselves amidst the crowd, and so we kind of turn the other way, getting hyper focused, more self-focused. And then what's the outcome of that? Do you feel more connected with others, or do you have a sense of feeling isolated, feeling separate, right? How is it working out for you to hold on to yourself so tightly, believing that your faults and flaws are so much bigger than everybody else? Isn't that creating more stress and suffering for yourself? Isn't that bringing you actually farther away from becoming your own best friend, your own soulmate? So though sometimes this can bring up a little fear of like losing yourself amidst all of those others, when we can actually engage in these practices within like the safety of our meditation, like what we just did, we actually start to realize that it not only helps us to take ourselves out from under the magnifying glass, right? But it can also bring ourselves into a kind of kinship with others as we start to focus on where our common grounds are. We all want to be happy, and we all want to be free from stress and suffering. It's a way of actually helping ourselves, right? So when you start to feel a kinship with others, if you were your own soulmate, you would want to help yourself feel more connected to others, right? Just as if you were a good friend to someone, you would want them to experience greater love and connection in their other relationships, a certain kinship with their kids or their families or the community at large. See, being your own soulmate What do soulmates try to do for one another? They try to help each other. They try to lift each other up and get each other more of what they need and less of what they don't need. And we can do this for ourselves as well. What you don't need anymore is to hold yourself under the microscope of self-focus, seeing every flaw and mistake disproportionately large and problematic, almost grotesque, right? You don't need that anymore. One of the main sources of such harsh self-criticism is this kind of intense self-focus, like that microscope. It distorts things. It makes things appear huge when they're really not. And this is what we tend to do in our minds, in our own minds, in the realm of self-criticism and judgment, which is the main obstacle between us and becoming our own dear friend, our own soulmate. So what we need more of is seeing ourselves and our lives in proportion, in equality with others in other people's lives. And being our own soulmate means we can help ourselves to widen our vision. When it becomes tight and small, we're worried about, oh, I couldn't believe I said that. Things get really out of proportion. My nose is so big, my skin, I'm getting old, and all of this self-focus blowing things out of proportion. And we can help ourselves begin to more and more feel this kind of kinship with others, connected and equal in our shared wishes, to be happy and to be free from stress and suffering. That's the practice of equalizing self and others toward potentially becoming our own friend, our own best buddy, our own greatest ally, our own soulmate. There's one more really simple and yet really powerful practice I want to teach you now, share with you now, that we can practice formally in meditation. But this is a practice that we can also really easily practice informally, or just when we're out living our lives, right? When we're not necessarily in meditation. I did this practice every single morning in 2020, the year 2020, when I would get up before everyone else in the house and go to my 21 days of radiation treatment for breast cancer. I needed to do the treatment alone. You cannot do radiation treatment with a buddy with you in the room. They could drive with you, but you got to do it alone, right? So many things are like this in life. I needed to do the treatment alone, and so I really needed to be there for myself throughout it. We all have times in life that we need to do hard things alone by ourselves. In fact, probably most of our life is really like this, us with us, right? So this practice can be easily stimulated by asking yourself one simple question. This is what I asked myself throughout my 21 days of radiation, this one simple question. And this question is, what would a friend do in this moment? That's the question. What would a friend do in this moment? So as I drove my car in the darkness of those early mornings toward the cancer center, I'd ask myself this question, here, now, in this car, in this moment. What would a friend do? How would a friend be with me? What would a friend offer me in this moment, in this dark morning in my car going to radiation treatment? What would a friend offer me here now in this moment? And sometimes it was like someone to talk to. So then I just talk to myself alone in my car, and I would listen. You can't just babble on and not listen, right? You talk, but your mind is elsewhere. Just imagine a friend doing that. You're talking to them and their mind is chronically elsewhere. No, I'd talk to myself and I'd listen, because that's what a friend would do. Allow me to talk and would actually be present with me and listen to me, not judge or criticize, just listen. Or what would a friend say in this moment? It's another question, another iteration on that. And I practiced telling myself what I most needed to hear, right? And I listened. just as a friend do. I told myself what I thought a good friend would say to me in those moments, and I listened. So we are confused if we always think we need another person to be there for us. It's nice sometimes when they are there, but with this practice, when they aren't there, can't be, which is so many times in our lives, we realize that we can be that friend to ourselves simply by asking this one simple question. What would a friend do in this moment? How would a friend be with me in this moment? And then can I step into that role for myself? I spend a lot of my time here at my desk working alone. I have a home office here in my bedroom because I just have a small little townhouse. Don't have an office besides this. And in those moments that I remember to ask myself this simple question, I find that so much of the time what I'm giving myself is just kind of like a little inward smile. Just a little reassurance that I'm not all alone. I'm here with you, Michelle. I'm here with you, and I'll be with you till the end, Michelle. And it's comforting in those moments, like few other things are, just to kind of give yourself that little inward smile. So it can be really simple. It can be a moment of like a little inward smile. It can be listening to what you need to say. It can be offering you some words of wisdom that you didn't even know you had because you never asked yourself if you did, right? So when I first started doing this practice, it was tentative at best. And I came to realize that that was just how a real friendship might begin. A little unsure at first, a little hesitant, a little tentative. And then as the practice grew for me in familiarity, so did the friendship. And so if you start this practice and it feels a little forced or tentative at first, well, that's how a lot of friendships get started, right? So we can just begin and continue offering ourselves this friendship. This is what I wish for you, what I wish for everyone, to be our own friend. To not always be holding ourselves under the microscope, the magnifying glass, searching for flaws, blowing things out of proportion, but rather to hold ourselves gently in the more open hand of friendship. And it can start with just this one question, this one asking. What might a friend do? What might a friend offer to me in this moment? So let's close with this. You can just close your eyes. Maybe taking a couple of nice deep breaths. Letting the breath start to naturalize, normalize. Just as you sit here, I want you to ask that question now. What would a friend offer me in this moment? For me, it was just a little inward smile, a little, good job, Michelle. You did an okay job here today. That's what I thought a friend might offer me in this moment, and so I gave it to myself. What is it for you? What might a friend say to you in this moment? And as soon as you imagine this, you're speaking those words to yourself in your mind. Do you notice that? You don't actually have to choose to speak them. You just think them. What would a friend say to me in this moment? And suddenly that's what the mind is saying to you. And as we prepare to conclude this workshop, I want to encourage you to take this practice out with you into the world. When you're sitting alone at a red light in your car, what might a friend do in this moment? You're feeling a little down, something didn't go so well at work, or you got some bad news. How might a friend comfort you in those moments? And you ask yourself that question, and just through the asking, you move into the experience of it. A friend might hug me, and you can imagine that in your mind's eye. A friend might give me a smile. You can practice an inward smile. A friend might say the right things. What are those right things? You imagine them, and as soon as you imagine them, you're speaking them to your own self in your mind. That's how it works. I hope so much these practices bring you benefit. I hope so much you can step on the path of being your own best friend, your own greatest ally, your own soulmate. You're worth it. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.